Welcome to a discussion here of the Spurs Roundtable. That's going to feature some of our writers for Project Spurs. I'm Joe Garcia. I'm a contributor to Project Spurs. I'm going to be joined by Jonas Clark, who's a writer for Project Spurs. How you doing, Jonas?
Doing all right, Joe. How are you, man?
Doing good. We're going to talk some Spurs, so I hope you're ready. It's going to get into either a good discussion or a heated discussion, but I'm here for all of it. And speaking of that, we're going to be joined by the one and only Benjamin Bornstein, who's also a writer for Project Spurs and our draft specialist here for any and all NBA draft prospects and college prospects. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm much more calm after Thursday night.
I know. It was a gamut, dude. We did a marathon. But we survived.
A lot of emotions.
Yeah, that reaction was priceless, and we'll talk about that. And we're going to be joined by the one and only, the OG himself of the Spurs cast, Paul Garcia. Paul, thank you for joining us for this Spurs Roundtable discussion. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Just got done updating my cap sheets with all the millions of moves that are going on and getting ready for free agency here, starting on Monday.
Yeah, free agency is going to be hot and heavy, and it's going to get started on Monday, so we're all going to be here for that. Knowing us, something will happen as soon as everybody takes a quick nap or goes to sleep, and then you wake up, what did I miss?
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and get into this right now. We're going to go ahead and talk about the NBA draft. Specifically, we're going to talk about the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs surprised everyone with their first pick in the NBA draft. At number 12, they did select Joshua Primo, who is the youngest player in the NBA draft this season or this year. He is 18 years old. I believe he's going to turn 19 years old a day before Christmas. How is that for you guys? Show you how young the kid is. Has one of the biggest hands of the draft, I got to say. And also, the thing is with this kid is a lot of fans are saying it was a reach. I was surprised at number 12. There was a lot of talent there at number 12, but to our dismay, Spurs Twitter over here, they got a little bit upset that the Spurs went ahead and picked somebody who was relatively unknown, and almost everyone had him going later in the first round. Some had him as high as 26, 27. There was news reported that OKC was interested in him at number 16. So we're going to go ahead and get the reaction first of our good friend here, Benjamin Bornstein. Since me and him were doing the NBA draft coverage for Project Spurs, I said I needed a minute, and Ben was like, what?
I gave you a minute, though. I gave you more than a minute.
True that.
I know you needed it.
I did.
But yeah, Josh Primo, man, that was a scary pick at 12, but we're through it now. And if you had, it's funny you say the Thunder had interest in him at 16. Well, the Thunder probably would have had interest in him at the 5 other 100 picks they had in this draft. So that wouldn't have come as a surprise to me at all. When you hoard that many draft picks, eventually you're going to be interested in someone too early, and you're going to take a swing. So, if it's true that the Spurs beat the Thunder to the swing on a pick, then great. That's fine, because I think Sam Presti has done a really nice job. So any move that kind of beats him to the punch is good in my book. The other thing was, like you said, youngest kid in this draft, will be turning 19 before the day before Christmas. So, maybe he gets a nice little present and he gets a call up to the big league. So who knows? But that's also, of course, assuming the Spurs are going to be getting a Christmas Day game, which the league, I'm sure, does not want. But you know what? That's another topic for another podcast. But, big hands, like you said, 6'5", 6'6", good shooter, very good shooter, something the Spurs do need. He's got positional versatility on defense. So he checks some of the boxes that the Spurs front office is looking for. I know a lot of people wanted to see the Spurs take a swing on a big man like a Kai Jones and Alperen Şengün, maybe an Usman Garuba, which is funny to me because Houston got both those last two guys, which is like if they were combined into one player, they would be the ultimate player, but they're each one half of the coin. One is totally offensive, the other is totally defensive. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to work out for them. But, the Houston Rockets really have nothing to lose at this point. So great for them. But Josh Primo, number 12, wearing number 11, love it. We got to see him in summer league over the next few days in Utah, and then again in Las Vegas. So let's ride.
That's what I said. Let's ride. Let's give the kid a chance. Initially I was shocked, but again, a couple days later, after kind of calmed down, look him up a little bit, read some good stuff about him, and I feel better about the pick. Let's go ahead and go to Jonas. Jonas, initially, how did you feel about this Primo pick at number 12?
I mean, I think similarly to everybody else, like, wow, another guard. On the radio last week, that was when we ended the show. That was what we said. The last thing you would want to do, and if it was going to be a guard with that first pick, then that also would mean or allude to the decision that maybe the team is going to move on from one of their other current guards. Whether that's moving somebody like a DeJounte Murray, who's a team guy and has high value. Lonnie Walker is also kind of sought after. And Derek White just kind of can't stay healthy either the last couple of years. No matter what he brings when he's on the court, the better than talent is availability. And right now he's not kind of checking that box. So, I mean, look, it's a Pop loves his guards. It's what he's doing right now with the Olympics, too. He went with guard play over size. Brian Wright afterwards said, we understand that a lot of today's league is being played on the perimeter. And you look at the Spurs was one of the worst shooting teams. It's not even a fact from 2 years ago where they were one of the better 3-point shooting teams that just didn't shoot volume. This time we didn't shoot volume, and rightfully so, because they couldn't shoot the three and they couldn't hit it this time around. And it really hurt losing Bryn Forbes, who looks like he might be going to the Nets, just come off of his championship run with the Bucks, and then Marco Bellinelli, of course, doing his thing overseas now too. You lose production from those guys. Try to rely on Patty, and Lonnie was your best 3-point shooter, I think, at maybe 38%. Understandable. What I think the more shocking part was not coming back in the second round and going for size with somebody like Sims, like Garza still on the board. That's probably the more shocking choice if you went shooting in the first round.
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up there. We were all very surprised, and it is what it is at this point. We can't go back and redo things. But, Paul, how were you feeling about this pick? Do you have any expectations for Joshua Primo maybe in the future? Are you going to look and see how he develops and see what he can do right now in the Summer League?
Yeah, just kind of what you all have all said. I mean, the fact that it almost took 24 hours before we got the reporting on the reasoning why they took him so early, which was that not only OKC, I think there was Atlanta, Charlotte might have had some interest in him as well. So I think that initially those first 24 hours were really tough to take in if you're a Spurs fan, because they just took a guy who was supposed to go 28, and there was really no justification for it. But now that it's kind of come out in different reporting that hey, other teams did want him in the teens, it makes more sense. You can kind of understand the pick now. As far as expectations, on paper right now, I just think that he's going to probably because of all the guard depth they have, like you all have said, he's going to probably end up in Austin playing some minutes there. I don't see him challenging like Lonnie Walker for his spot at shooting guard. In the event if Patty Mills comes back, which that looks possible, maybe, then it's going to be tough for him to play any kind of point guard. So I really feel like a year in Austin, but then into year 2, that's where it kind of looks like it's opening up now. But like something you all have all said, if he shows up in the summer league and really shows something, there's a chance that hey, he comes into training camp, competes, and who knows? I mean, Devin Vassell as a rookie got real minutes last year, and even though it is a guard heavy team right now, who knows just what he shows out in summer league. But right now, my expectations on paper are that he'd probably spend a lot of time in Austin and not getting many minutes with the NBA team. Yeah,
and that's a consensus I think with everybody, and mostly everybody, on Spurs Twitter, especially the Spurs fans. They expect the kid to play a heavy dose of minutes with the Austin Spurs. More than likely, we really won't see him get heavy rotation minutes here with the San Antonio Spurs for another maybe 2 seasons or so. We're going to see how he develops. Maybe 3 seasons. Who knows? It'll be a while.
I'm going to shake that one off. No, I'm going to shake that one off. I think that it's going to happen sooner.
You think so?
Because if you look at guys, it has to, how you fit into the system and how you learn the system is what builds you and creates your opportunity. Keldon was able to graduate really quickly and do what he did in the bubble. And then year 2, he was able to produce as a starter this last year. Lonnie was able to earn serious bench minutes towards the end of his rookie year, and then also come back and really produce on his second year. Luka is a project. They drafted him at that high to be a project, but what you have in potential is why they bought on him high. I think that, yes, Primo is a potential pick, but this isn't a translation learning how to play a different kind of basketball translation. Luka's was coming over from Europe, had to learn a whole lot and actually grow into his body. We see Primo's hands. He might also have to grow into his body if he's going to grow to kind of match that size. But I'm going to shake that off, Joe. I think that he's going to probably really be producing. He'll get the call up like most rookies do come February and make that trip. And then it's going to be how does he handle those minutes and the learning opportunity with Pop as to whether he's going to get more action.
Yeah, my only gripe with him, I think why he might stay a little bit longer on the Austin Spurs is his age. He's a freshman. He was out of Alabama. We still don't really know what his ceiling is at this point or what his potential is. I get that. He's a work in progress. They're going to go ahead and develop him over with the Austin Spurs. If he shows some real promise, I'm with you, Jonas. I believe that he might get the call up quicker. I believe the Spurs saw something very special in this young man to go ahead and select him at number 12. He probably impressed the heck out of him in his, workouts because he's a crafty shooter. So I'm thinking that maybe not only his shooting prowess, but also the way that he carried himself for somebody at his age of 18 probably fit the Spurs mold as far as what you want in a stereotypical Spurs player. So I understand why they felt he was a complete package and they had to have him at 12. But for me, personally, I'm just going to have kind of a wait and see to see what happens with this young man. I'm hoping for the best. I mean, you got to love the kid. Everything that he said so far, and you see him in the interviews, so excited to get his jersey, so humble. What don't you like about this young man? You love everything about this kid. I think he's going to probably be called the babyface assassin for the San Antonio Spurs, hopefully if his shooting prowess does develop. But Paul, what do you think about what Jonas just said?
Yeah, no, he had some good points there, and two things I want to bring up. One, why Jonas is right that he could end up maybe not. Again, I don't know if he's going to play this season, but the following season, the reason why in year 2 I think there's an opportunity is because of Lonnie Walker IV's situation. Remember, he can get an extension starting on August 2nd up until the first day of the regular season. If the Spurs don't give him that extension, well then he becomes a restricted free agent next offseason, and all of a sudden, if he goes and signs elsewhere, they don't want to match next offseason. Well then, hey, that backup shooting guard spot is right there for Primo. So I think that's one part to watch. And then number 2 is something you said earlier, Joe. You said about how young he is. Really, when he's barely coming for his 4-year extension, he's only going to be 23. So they have him in a great situation. And yes, early on in just seeing him 1 year at Alabama, most mocks only think he's going to turn into a role player at best. But again, this is why the Spurs took this chance on him. They think he can go further, considering how young he is and how long really they can keep him in their system and part of their group because they're getting him right now just at the age of 18.
Yeah, what about you? Final thoughts here on Joshua Primo, Ben. Do you think we're going to be able to see this kid develop and come out of the Austin Spurs a little bit sooner than expected, much like Keldon or even Lonnie Walker, for example?
I think if Primo continues to prove that he grasps the game like he did at Alabama. He started games in the second half of the season for Alabama. He initially came off the bench, and then Coach Nate Oates liked him so much that he said, "I've got to start you." And he was playing so well that I have to start you. I don't have a choice. So, I think if he continues on that kind of progression, I think he could certainly still get himself into a few games in February, during that rodeo road trip. When Pop is undoubtedly going to be resting guys, some guys are going to collect some DNPs, DNP CDs, maybe a DNP old here and there. Do they still list those?
I believe so.
But God, that was still one of my favorite stat box scores, seeing Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, DNP old. But
that would be like somebody. I think that old would be Derek at 27.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Man.
And that's a good point that Jonas actually brings up. Is this team is incredibly young, so we don't even know if a lot of those guys are going to be load managing. We don't really have guys who need that. Maybe Derek White needs that for injury reasons, but I think with Josh Primo, if the shooting shows up and kind of the shot creation and the playmaking for others, if those three things really show up in the G League, I think there's a great opportunity for him to see a few games this year and then probably get more of an expanded role in San Antonio in year 2.
The kid could actually grow a little bit. I mean, he's only 18 years old. He's 6'6". His hands are huge. He could kind of grow into those hands as you suggested.
He gets to 6'7" and 6'8". All of a sudden, you have a forward now, which is what the Spurs wanted anyway, or what Spurs fans wanted. So, maybe you secretly drafted a forward without the fans really knowing it, saying, "Oh, his growth plates look great."
I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, Spurs. They're trying to trick us all. But the kid has an amazing wingspan right now. I believe he's at, 7'1", 7 foot, his wingspan. If he grows a little bit more, he can play longer, than that 7'1" wingspan. So that's kind of impressive, So there's a lot of good things to get excited about. I think about Joshua Primo. We'll just have to wait and see what happens and what develops. It's still early on, so wish the kid the best and root for him, Let's go ahead and get on to the next selection, which was one Joe Weiskamp. They went ahead and selected him with the 41st pick. I was looking at some of the mock drafts. They had him going up, I think it was as high as 46, 45. Most everybody thought he was going to go either 40 or 41. So he kind of got picked right around where he was forecasted. I know a lot of Spurs fans, including our very own here, Josh, or John Diaz, should I say. He was saying that he would have rather gone with Luka Garza. I hear that argument, but at the end of the day, the Spurs just felt like they needed to go with Joe Weiskamp, maybe for his three-point shooting, and his ability to knock down some shots, That's the only thing that I can really see about this young man. He's at 6'7", so it's not like he's a 6'3" or 6'4", player. I mean, he's got that prowess. But again, I understand where Spurs fans kind of be like another person who can kind of play the guard position, small forward position. I know they needed some size, but at this point, they just got what they thought felt best for the team moving forward. But does this actually signal a movement towards the Spurs playing the long game and drafting these types of players that are fairly young to go ahead and, have something available in case we lose some of our veterans in free agency? What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think that, compared to Primo, I think he actually has a chance, Weiskamp, of actually getting some minutes next year because of the skills that he's bringing shooting. This team is, like, I was just looking at the numbers, and his accuracy from college translates very well. It's going to say he's going to actually shoot very well at the NBA 3. Whereas Primo, I think he's going to struggle with that difference a little bit in his rookie season, where, like, Weiskamp can immediately shoot that way. And he would literally be like the fourth best shooter already on this team just coming in. Now, again, we got to see exactly, why was he in the second round? Why was he in that 43rd kind of range, and they took him at 41? That's why I'm very interested next week when the summer league games begin. I want to see how he stacks up on defense against some of these NBA level veterans that he's going to go against. And I really want to see what it looks like out on the court because offensively, I think he has everything that's going to give him a role pretty quickly on this team. Especially whether it's the starting lineup or the bench unit, they're not having a lot of shooting. Then Coach Pop can easily go to someone who needs to just space the floor, and Weiskamp's going to do that. But again, the question is, how is he going to fare on defense? How bad is it going to be for him out there? And that's what I'm really interested to see coming in here on Summer League.
Yeah. So what about you, Ben? What are your first initial thoughts on Joe Weiskamp and our good friend John Diaz wanting us to go ahead and get Luka Garza instead? What do you got to say to John?
I've talked with John, and I love Luka Garza. I think I think he would have been a great pick too. But when you have a chance to draft Joe Threeskamp, you kind of have to. But I mean, you don't have to, but you should. He is a very good athlete, not a sneaky athletic guy. No, he is a good athlete. He's really bouncy. I think he had the third highest max vert at the combine. So the kid can jump out of the gym too. His issue is going to be, is he going to get beat by quicker guys off the dribble if he's guarding out on the perimeter? And I'm not sure he's big enough to really be guarding guys down in the post either. So defense is really going to be an issue for him, but he is going to be an excellent catch and shoot option on offense. He doesn't really create his own shot, but he's got some straight line drives he can get to. He's smart enough to, throw the pump fake at a guy who's closing out too hard. One dribble pull up, he can get that. Not an issue. And at his size with his athleticism, I think it was a fine pick. I also happen to think that, and I think we're going to get into this later, but I happen to think that the Spurs selecting these two kinds of guys are signaling a couple things. One, that they're looking for more versatile guys who maybe can play 2 or 3 positions on offense, maybe not on defense in the case of these guys, but going forward, maybe more so on defense, but also that they feel they have a shot, or at least a legitimate shot, at a few free agent bigs this summer, and they can go out and kind of plug those holes with free agency rather than taking a risk on a guy in the draft you're not sure about. Yeah,
well said, Ben. I kind of have to agree with some of the stuff that you said there, especially with what it signals for the Spurs and what they want to do, the direction that the team is going to be moving by drafting these two young men. Jonas, what are your initial thoughts on Joe Weiskamp?
I mean, when you look at it on the stat sheet, it looks like what Devin Vassell was in college minus the defender. So I was like, oh, okay, we got another Devin Vassell who's 2 inches taller. But when you look at Devin's rookie year, he didn't shoot the three as well. I think he dropped like 6% from college, and that's not the trend you want to see. But we have one of the best shooting coaches to work with him on that, and that's fine. But I agree that Weiskamp can go ahead and see minutes right away because he's just a shooter. This reminds me of kind of, again, like a Bryn Forbes early in his years. He spent some Austin time, but he was just a volume shooter guy, stand and shoot, because you've got enough playmakers. And that we've talked about that before, too. We got a couple of guys who can create their own stuff. It's just when they're kicking it out to somebody else that you don't have those shooters available. And so that's what you got in two guys. And even Primo's stats, when you look at him as just a get to your spot, we're going to pass you the ball, shoot, great spot-up shooter. And so I think that when you look at the combination of the picks, three-point shooting, that's what this team didn't have. They have it now. And like Ben alluded to, their size available, their size linked to the Spurs in free agency. Three-point shooting is a little bit harder to find right now, though.
Yeah, three-point shooting is hard to find, and as you stated, Jonas, they does fill a need with the San Antonio Spurs. They did need somebody that could knock down the ball from beyond the arc, which we did not have. I believe we were one of the worst teams from beyond the arc this season. If not, we were almost near dead last. I think we're second to last. We're that bad.
Yeah.
So,
Joe, one more thing real quick. Concerning his contract, I think that's going to be interesting to watch because if they give him a full NBA deal like they did last year with Trey Jones, well, then it signals, hey, they want this guy to be part of the full team, get an actual rotation spot. However, if they give him a two-way slot, well, then maybe they're not as certain. So I really wonder, because he's actually going to show up to Summer League next week, and Trey Jones didn't have to do that. I wonder if that's going to kind of determine what kind of contract they give him going forward. I don't know if they're initially going to sign him, or if they're just going to wait it out, let him play a few Summer League games, and then make that evaluation. So that's also something to watch too, is his contract, what type of contract he gets.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
I think some of what's going to determine that is, they have a ton of guys who are basically coming off their payroll this summer. It's how many of those guys are they bringing back, if any? And if they're not bringing any of those guys back, then to the Spurs, you kind of figure, well, why wouldn't we just throw him a full contract? It's not really going to hurt us. It's not really going to affect our salary cap and what we can offer potential max guys like a John Collins, or, give a fairly hefty contract to a guy like a Laurie Martin and still be able to go out and sign maybe another shooting forward like Doug McDermott. Of course, I have now just named my fantasy offseason for the Spurs in getting either Collins or Markkanen, and then getting Doug McDermott to back you up in shooting. So, just out here trying to speak things into existence.
You're talking about John Collins or Zach Collins?
I know.
John Collins.
There is a difference.
I was so mad that rumor came out that Zach Collins, because now whenever I write an article, I have to make sure I phrase Zach Collins instead of John Collins. I was so used to just putting Collins in all my words, and now I have to actually clarify. No, because they're interested in both. So.
But I mean, if you want to you can't throw him too much money. He has a bad injury history. But
yeah,
if you want to go out and get, if somehow you whiff on Markkanen and John Collins, God forbid the Spurs whiff on both, which would be infuriating. But if they somehow whiff on both, going out and getting a Zach Collins and being like, hey, we'll give you a year or two, go prove yourself, and maybe work for your next big contract, and then he comes off the books in a year or two and you're still pretty flexible, great. And maybe you motivate a guy to play better than he has the last few years, and You just make sure the training staff is on him all the time. If you got to massage his legs out, if you got to, whatever you got to do, if you got to give him the rubber band exercises, everything, you just make sure that dude stays on the court.
Yeah, I think his biggest problem, Ben, is that he's not been able to stay healthy. I believe he just came from a season where he had a broken foot, so that's kind of in question too, much like Derek White is durability, moving forward. So, I mean, we can get him at the right price. I'm all for it. As Jonas so eloquently quoted a while back, you never want to overpay for veterans, so I always remember that about Jonas. So we're going to go ahead and pitch to you, Jonas. You're going to start us off here. How will you grade the Spurs on a grade from A to F on how they selected their players or their picks in this year's NBA draft?
I think that like a B-. I think if that's fair. I really wanted to see size. And in full transparency, I wanted to trade the first pick because I feel like you could have gotten a veteran to go out. This team is super young. And now you get even younger by bringing in an 18-year-old. We understand he's going to have a development process. I just feel like there's some kind of move that could have been done. Walking out of draft night, still holding on to DeMar DeRozan too, is a little bit of a disappointment. Because as we're entering free agency, I think the opportunity to sign and trade might disappear. Hopefully he does us a solid, but I think that the B- just because you addressed a major need and how today's game is played, and it just was the 3-point wasn't even an option last year. You just get shot out of games, and that. Being able to shoot the ball really helps when you're kind of winding down in games and everybody's a little bit fatigued. You don't want to run up and down because the athleticism can keep them in for the first half. And third quarters were the Spurs just like nemesis. And so if you can come out and get some shots up and kind of keep that point production going with some three deep buckets, I think that would be ideal. So I'm going to give him a B-. It's not a bad one. Lots of potential. You get one of the best 3-point shooters in the draft. A guy career shot above 40%. So, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been 2 home run swings and
a miss. A swing and a miss. Yeah, I hear you, Jonas. I think I'm going to be the Russian judge in this discussion here, but we're going to pitch to you next, Paul. What grade would you go ahead and hand out the Spurs for this year's NBA draft?
I would go with the B, just because of I really like the Weiskamp pick at 41 is kind of right in the range. And again, it's not their fault if it's true that yes, multiple teams were trying to get a Primo so early. But again, just the fact that almost every draft expert and mock saw that he was going to be a late first rounder. The Primo one could turn into an A down the road. Again, we just can't judge that right now because it's so early, so young. But again, if he doesn't, though, well, then that's that looks like a pretty bad selection there. So I'd go with the B right now. All
right, I'm going to pitch to you next, Ben. What grade are you going to hand out for the San Antonio Spurs in this year's NBA draft?
I'm in the B- C+ range. And really that's because I like the Weiskamp pick the most. I think that kind of saved them a bit. But for me, you had if you were going to go out and get a shooting guard who could help you right away. I thought the guy after Primo was the pick. Chris Duarte, I thought would have been a better pick there if you were really going to go out and do that. I was a guy who was always high on Corey Kispert as well. I just thought there were too many good options after Primo, even knowing that, even with the Spurs knowing at that time that people were going to end up trying to take him later in the teens. I thought the opportunity to get a Jalen Johnson, a Kai Jones, even a Trey Murphy, who had really been rocketing up draft boards at that point. I think any of those 4 picks I would have felt better about immediately after the pick. But, once you've taken a step back, you've had 24 hours to think about it, and you're really considering things, you say, okay, they made a long-term pick. But I'm kind of with Jonas. I thought they could have traded back. I really thought they should have tried to make a deal with New York and gotten the 19 and 21 picks and maybe given them something else along with the 12th pick. I don't think the 19 and 21 alone are probably worth the 12th pick, but you could have given him something else, maybe a quick sign and trade with him or something. Maybe it turns into a bigger deal if you sign and trade DeMar DeRozan and you say, okay, well, we want more than just those 2 picks now. We want something else as well. But, I mean, with those 19th and 21st picks, Kai Jones was taken at 19, and I don't think he's going to end up with he's going to end up in Charlotte, which is going to make him and LaMelo Ball super fun to watch. And then Keon Johnson is going to end up going to the LA Clippers. And I think they ended up moving back to the 25th pick so that they could get Quentin Grimes. So, at 19 and 21, and then Isaiah Jackson was taken at 22. So if you move back to a 19 and 21, you can, even if you don't feel comfortable taking a Kai Jones there for some reason, there's an Isaiah Jackson who's kind of, exactly what you're getting with him. And, maybe you can take your bit of a home run swing on a Jalen Johnson. Of course, he was sandwiched in there at 20 to the Hawks. So you would have had to take him at 19, presumably. But I don't know. I thought there were some good options afterwards. There was some very surprising picks afterwards, but that is not for this podcast because I don't have the time to rip all these teams who made stupid decisions. But like B-, C+ for me with Paul's caveat that Primo could end up being an A if he turns out to come on quicker than the Spurs anticipated, and if he ends up having a larger role than they anticipated at the speed at which he gets there.
Gotcha. So I'm going to hand out my grade. I think just based on, because I believe that the Primo pick to me was a reach by the San Antonio Spurs. It is a gamble. It's the NBA draft. We never know about certain players. I hope that the kid does pan out. Wish him the best. But overall, I like the 41st pick more than I did like the number 12 pick with Primo. I liked Weiskamp a lot more than I did Primo's pick. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give the Spurs a solid C. I just think that, the Primo pick to me was a reach, and he's really young right now, untested. And like I said, I'm hoping for the best, and I hope that they make me eat crow. And, in about a season or two, we see this young man on the team just balling out. That's what I really hope for. So I'm hopeful for the future regardless. I'm still going to watch the games. I'm not going to go ahead and say that I'm done with the Spurs. I'm going to pick another team. That's nonsense. Sacrilege. I'm still going to stick with the team no matter what and look forward to the development of the young draft players that we have right now. So moving forward now, we're going to go ahead and get into the NBA Summer League. That's just around the corner. That's going to be popping off here. I do know that we have the Salt Lake City schedule for the Summer League. It starts on August the 3rd at 8 p.m. They're going to be versus the Jazz White teams, which they have. The teams are weird now. They have like the Jazz White team, the Jazz Blue team. It's like, okay. I just think it's funny. They should just put the Jazz, But we have the Spurs playing the Jazz on Wednesday, August the 4th at 6 p.m. That's going to be the Jazz Blue team. And these two games are going to be featured on NBA TV for anybody who wants to go ahead and see the Summer League. And Friday, August the 6th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, they're going to face the Grizzlies on ESPNU. That's the other channel that ESPN has, not ESPN3, but ESPNU. So you can go ahead and check out these three games. Not the Ocho. No, not by any means. The ball would have to be on fire for it to be on the Ocho. But what do you guys think so far? Are you going to be excited? You're going to be watching these first couple games? We'll start with you, Ben.
Sure, I would love to watch the first few games. I'm very curious to see how this team meshes together. I think they've kind of got an odd selection of talent, surrounding the draft picks that they have. They kind of went out and just said, let's see what we can find and fill some spots, which is, kind of always what happens in Summer League. Unless you just have a ton of first and second year guys, you're really just going out there and trying to find dudes to fill the roster and say, all right, listen, our priority are clearly our draft picks, make them look good. But also, if you happen to ball out, somebody will come looking for you. Maybe not us, but somebody.
Someone will find you. Jonas, I know that you're going to be excited about the Spurs Summer League kicking off here on August the 3rd. What are you particularly looking for with these first three games out of this young core that we have on display?
Well, a lot of it's going to be who's going to be on the Austin Spurs roster this year. You've got a couple guys who played on the team back in February in the Gubble. Nate Renfroe, my favorite guy from that stretch, because blocks over dunks all day, every day, and he can do both really well. Really excited to see him. And Anthony Mathis, I think, is another great addition because he's just an all-around baller. He's a hooper, if you want to, say who's a basketball player and who's a hooper. I think that he's a hooper because he can get it all done. At first, it was just the 3-point production that he brought to Austin in Orlando, and then as Trey Jones got called up, as Luka got called up, as Robert Wood II got recalled by the Kings. Mathis's role really expanded. Him and Cam Reynolds carried the team the rest of the way. Of course, it was a first round playoff loss, but they still had some good chemistry going. So you've got that. Another one to watch, guys, Caleb Johnson, once again with the Spurs. That's Keldon's brother. So I think that that's good on the organization. Just to kind of keep him around too. That's good. It helps with that relationship with Keldon. Trey Jones, looking for him to ball out, especially now that he gets the chance to be featured alongside Primo and Weiskamp. Primo's probably going to be the 2 guard, and Trey is going to really run that offense. And he had averaged a double-double nearly through 6 games in the double last year in terms of scoring and assists, and he was just on fire and dishing it out. So that's really some stuff to watch there, because I think that what we're trying to do at the second point guard coming off the bench is still open. I think everybody wants Trey Jones to take that spot as a pure distributor, and I think that that's really what I'm keeping an eye out for. Also note, guys, just look at the size. Again, there's one 6'11", I think. The rest is 6'9" and lower. And so this translates to looking at how Pop and the Team USA constructed the Olympic roster, and also the heavy guard play, positionless basketball that it looks like we're going to be having in San Antonio as well.
Yeah, well, Paul, I'm going to go ahead and ask you the same question, but we also have the second half of the schedule that's going to be occurring in Las Vegas, which is Monday, August the 9th at 6 p.m. The Spurs will take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Tuesday, August 10th at 7, they're going to take on the Bulls. The first game is going to be featured on ESPNU. The second will be on NBA TV. The third game in this schedule is going to be on Thursday, August the 12th at 2 p.m. when they face the Charlotte Hornets. That's going to be on ESPNU. And then to go ahead and round out the end of the Summer League, it's going to be Sunday, August the 15th at 5 p.m. The Spurs will face the Brooklyn Nets on NBA TV. Paul, you're going to be more excited about the first part of the schedule in Salt Lake or the second part of the schedule in Las Vegas?
I mean, for me, just both, because there's 5 players that I'm specifically watching. Number one, Devin Vassell. We already learned that they're going to take that approach with him, where they're going to let him be a playmaker. They're going to put the ball in his hands, similar to what they used to do with Kawhi and also with Kyle Anderson back in the day. And so, yeah, I want to see what Devin can do. I don't know. Like what we saw, like Kawhi when that first happened, was they only let him play like in 2 games, and they pulled him as soon as it looked like it was going to work for him. So that's a big seeing Devin Vassell get an expanded role, because he won't get that during the regular season unless he really flourishes here. Trey Jones, like you all mentioned, Trey can end up being the backup point guard next year if Patty Mills signs elsewhere. So I want to see what kind of development he's made over the summer, if that's his job next year as the backup point guard. For me, just because I don't watch college basketball, Josh Primo and Joe Weiskamp, I haven't really watched them aside from kind of what you see on YouTube and things like that. So I want to see what they do on the NBA floor against players that have been in the NBA before, and that'll give me a better evaluation and judgment of where I think if they can play on the Spurs in the regular season, whether or not they can get a slot. And then also another player who doesn't get a lot of mention is Dequan Jeffries. And the reason why is because they claimed him just 2 days, I think it was, before the regular season ended. He never got to play on the team. And then right now, just today, it was his deadline to get a team option extension, and they didn't do that. They declined that team option, so he's now a free agent. So if he were to show up and have a really good summer league, well, then they would still have his bird rights too. I think it's only like non-bird rights or early bird rights, but still they'd have a way to re-sign him and kind of have an advantage over other teams. So I think he's a player as well to watch, because there was a reason why they picked him up right before the end of the season, and they've had him in their gym to kind of see what he can do. And then now let's see what he can do against out on the summer league. So those are 5 players that I'm kind of watching, and yeah, I'm excited to watch both of them, for both summer leagues.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the same boat. I'm going to be excited to watch these games just to see how the players are developing. In my eyes, I'm really going to want to see what Trey Jones, Devin Vassell can do, Luka Samanic, and of course, going to go ahead and be keeping a close eye on Joshua Primo and Joe Weiskamp, just to see how they're doing. How ready are they right at this certain point in time? And what are they going to show me, more importantly, in the summer league? Is there enough promise there to really get me excited that, man, these kids, they really develop at a heavy clip? Maybe we could see them, like Jonas says, maybe we'll see them next season, getting some heavy rotation minutes and contributing. That would be exciting to me because, again, Spurs need to address the issue of shooting, and both Primo and Weiskamp can go ahead and help us in spades in that department. So I'm really excited about the future of the San Antonio Spurs moving forward, and I'm excited about the Summer League. So we're going to go ahead and digress from here, and we're going to talk about the last one of the last few subjects that we have here, which is going to be NBA free agency. NBA free agency is here. It starts on Monday. And more than likely, when we go to sleep tonight, we're going to hear something happened in the middle of the night. We're going to wake up to some Spurs breaking news, or like, Sham Sharnaya just put out. He put something out about Chris Paul, and now the tweet has been deleted, So it's like, it's coming to that. It's coming to that point now, ladies and gentlemen. What we've been waiting for all season long, free agency is about to start. It's upon us now. What are you guys excited about most in NBA free agency? What positions do you think that the Spurs, or what positions do you hope the Spurs will fill regarding free agency? We'll start with you, Jonas.
I mean, sorry, guys, I'm going to steal it. I think that we need to address the center position behind Jakob Poeltl. That's one of the things that Brian Wright said to the media after the draft, recognizing that this team still needs size at the end of the day as well. And I think that what's really interesting is the way that they handled Trey Lyles, because he had size, the ability to defend somewhat, not a great defender, but also he was a decent shooter too. And so that they decided that he sat on Pop's bench a lot of last year was an interesting decision. Gorgie Jang was a definitely intriguing addition down the stretch, and he too is a free agent. So whether they bring him or not, him back or not, is going to be something else to watch. But I just want a bruiser. I want somebody that's gonna bang down in the paint with Jakob, because we don't know how he's going to deal with his foul trouble issues moving forward. He improved his free throw shooting down the stretch, which was nice to see that was kind of kicking in, but hopefully he hasn't lost it during the off season. But that's just the big position of need, and it's not. I don't need an athletic big, like a Kai John. I don't need that. I don't need a high flying big center. It'll be cool, but I just don't know that that's out there, especially with the playmakers we need. I just want rebounding. That's it. I'm a simple guy. Blocks over dunks. Let's go.
So are you saying that you'd be okay with a Boban, return to the San Antonio Spurs?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
No. I know that's the unpopular fan opinion down here. But when this is going to be, he's got to be able to run with the Wolves, man. And this team is going to move, and I'm ready for it. So, this is that speed. Everybody, we came out of 20 years of just pure, solid, fundamental basketball, and then then you have a point in purgatory where you're still just kind of old on your contracts. You lost your big star, and now you got to wait for guys to develop, and those guys are developing. So it's time to roll with them. But if that speed can happen, and if Pop is talking in Jason Tatum's ear and trying to work something out, I understand he's under contract, but if there's something that can be done, let's do it.
And there you go. So what about you, Paul? NBA free agency coming up. What do you hope the Spurs are going to address in free agency? Any players you'd like to throw out?
Yeah, I think what Jonas has said. Brian Wright, the GM, kind of gave us the preview of what they're looking for. He said they're looking for shooting in this free agency. They're also looking for size, like he mentioned. But he also mentioned versatility, players that can play inside and outside. So for me, I'm looking at guys that can shoot the three, also play a little bit inside. And so that's why I think that obviously John Collins is the number one free agent that you'd want. But right now, all indications do look like he's going to return to Atlanta, unless there's a surprising a shift there. So I think that next on the board is Laurie Martin. Markkanen, and there was just reporting today that yes, the Spurs do have interest in him, but also the Thunder have interest in him. So he's actually done a great job of getting the two teams that have a bunch of cap space to have interest in him, because then they could have a little bit of a bidding war here for him. And then Chicago's willing to let him go. So I think Laurie Markkanen's a very realistic target. If not, maybe somebody like Kelly Olynyk, though he may be a little bit, commanding like $20 million is just a lot of money for him. Again, I'm just looking at bigs that can kind of spread the floor for you. Like we mentioned already, Zach Collins is out there, but he could miss all of next season. We don't know his injury timetable, and he would only be about $2 to $4 million to sign him. And then out on the wing to add some shooting, we know that they've been linked to Kelly Oubre Jr. And then just recently, Tom Osborne, the Express News, reported that even Oubre Jr. would welcome San Antonio interest as well. So again, his price range is a lot too, $24 million. So I'm actually looking for more like a veteran, like somebody like Otto Porter Jr. I know he's injury prone, but he's still kind of young. He's like 28, and he gives you a little bit of where you can put him at the 4 to guard, some of the better offensive players out on the wing, and then he can still, if he gets his shot down, he can make 3. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is, what direction does this team go with? Because this is $49 million in cap space. This is the second most behind only the New York Knicks. So this will be a very interesting offseason.
Very interesting. And one name that nobody mentioned is Bobby Portis Jr. He will be available. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you didn't give me the chance, Joe. I was going to say his name. I was going to pop my eyes out while I
stole
said
your
it.
thunder. I did it.
You couldn't mistake it.
So go ahead, give us your list of players you think is going to be available in free agency that the Spurs should go ahead and target.
The greatest bug-eyed player to ever play the game, Bobby Portis. That's who I want. Kelly Oubre absolutely terrifies me. I don't care if he's interested in playing here, and I don't care if they're interested in having him. His inconsistency terrifies me. There's no way that you can, if you're going to go out there and say, we want versatility, we want shooting, that you're going to go out and get Kelly Oubre and say, yes, he's fixed those problems. There's no way he fixes those problems. To me, a Doug McDermott would be a nice little grab. I think you can get him for a decent chunk of change, not too much. Bobby Portis is probably going to demand a little more money after winning a ring and playing a pretty pivotal role in there. So I think he's a guy who should be on the radar for sure. There are some older guys you could get to just kind of hang around for a bit and just shore up your front court rather, if for a year or two until you draft the guy you want or you really end up with the free agent that you want. And a guy I really happen to like is Robin Lopez. 1, because he has phenomenal hair. 2, he is a fellow nerd, so he's going to be great. And then 3, he's a good defensive big who can help you. So I think if he would be nice. Daniel Tice might be all right. 29, not quite on the young side, but not really old. But he can space the floor for you a little bit. He shoots it. I think a good backup option at a big. If you can't land a John Collins, you can't land a Laurie Markkanen, and you don't feel great about Zach Collins, maybe you get a Rashawn Holmes out of Sacramento, who is surely looking for a place where you can do more winning than what they do in Sacramento. So those are kind of my options. And of course, if Boban decided he wanted to come back, I wouldn't hate that either.
So we're talking.
Let's do Rashawn.
Right. So
you and I share an alma mater, fellow Falcon. That would be great.
So we're not talking the bargain bin at the dollar store. We're talking about the reduced priced area of Walmart. Okay, so I got you guys.
I mean, if you could go to Costco and get a couple of these guys in bulk, I wouldn't hate that either.
Oh, there you go. You could buy you some Boban in bulk.
Oh, God, I would. Man, if you could have the star of John Wick 3 playing for you, oh man, the dream.
You know what? If Boban does return to the Spurs, we're gonna have to chip in and get you a Boban jersey, Ben.
That would be incredible. That would be a dream come true.
Ben's gonna say, "That's my guy."
always and forever. I will always root for Boban. I don't care where he is.
Right. Look at that stat line: 0 points, 1 rebound. That's my dude.
In 3 minutes, let's ride.
Oh, he fouled out in 3 minutes too. We really got to put that out there too. So, beautiful stat line for you, Ben.
the per 40s on that are going to be insane.
Oh my God! So as we start coming to a close here, we're just going to go ahead and share our quick thoughts on Team USA. They do have a tough schedule coming up. While they look good against Nigeria because there was a lack of talent there, they still have some things that they need to work through, and it looks like they're starting to come around a little bit, play a little bit better as a team. The ball movement is there. They're starting to knock down their shots consistently. They still make some mistakes here and there, but it's to be, for us to be considerate, because at this point you just kind of have a ragtag group of players getting used to each other, while you have these other teams who are more seasoned out there. Team USA is going to have a tough schedule coming up. They are going to be playing France again. They will have Australia to contend with, and also Spain. These teams are very good, So, Ben, what do you think? You think Team USA comes home with the gold, or are we going to have to settle for the bronze, or maybe no medal?
That's tough. I mean, I think they're finally getting it together. The other part of it is they're actually hitting shots, which will completely change the game for you. I mean, they absolutely went on. They gave the Czech Republic an onslaught in the second half of that game against them after it was tight in the first. So, I mean, they could do that to other teams. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but if they're going to win gold, it's certainly going to be much tougher than it has been in Olympics past. And I mean, Spain has a great team, and for whatever reason, Ricky Rubio plays like an all-world point god when he's in international play.
He's a world beater.
He really is, though. You have to account for that. I don't know how, but you have to account for it.
Yeah, another thing too is we're going to go ahead and pitch to Jonas here, because FIBA Patty has that Australian team looking pretty sharp right now, and they won a close game the other day, 86-83. Good day on you, mate. Jonas, we're going to pitch to you. What is your expectation for Team USA? Do you think they're going to go ahead and medal, or do you think they're going to go ahead and miss the medal round completely?
Well, also a quick shout out to Matt Nielsen, assistant head coach over there with Australia and the Boomers. He is the Austin Spurs head coach. So we have two coaches in this mix. But as far as what Team USA is going to do, I mean, look, I haven't seen enough to really believe that they can make it through this next round, because it's just been inconsistent play up and down. And I think it was Vince Carter said it in the coverage of the last game, where if they don't have the 3-point shot, if it's not there, then they're not going to do well. That's what Pop is trying to do with the Spurs roster and with the Olympics roster is interesting, because it's all reliant on that. There is no size, and internationally, there's size. We saw that against France. We saw that against Iran, and we saw that even against the Czech Republic, where they just banged inside, and they were able to keep it a close game for the first half. In the end, athleticism will win out, but you're going back a bit. Now you're looking at the Spains of the world. If France is there, France is going to be there in the next round. Australia, they lost Aaron Baines. I don't know if you guys saw that with a locker room slip, but he's out. So that's going to impact what they can do. But size, size is what's going to win. And so at the end of the day, it's got to be the new Olympic leading scorer for Team USA of all time, which is Kevin Durant. He's got to watch his fouls. And he's just got to get to the basket, get involved and get to the basket, because if you look back at 2008, 2012, it was high-flying basketball move. Use your athleticism and just dominate over everybody. But we're playing with a bunch of 6'6" guards and not 6'8" LeBrons, and it's a different kind of ball game. So I don't know that they medal. I really don't. I hope, national pride. I hope that they medal, but. I think that this is an interesting test, because it's our head coach over there with a roster similarly constructed with more talent than what we've got. And if they can't bring home the gold internationally, be interested to see how that approach changes San Antonio's construction throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a different question here. A lot of Spurs fans, the media, they have been very harsh on one Greg Popovich and his coaching of Team USA. If Team USA does, in fact, medal, they're going to have to go ahead and give Coach Popovich some credit. Putting together this ragtag group, and getting them to play at a high level. They are going to have a hard test ahead of them, as I stated, Paul, with Spain, Australia, and France again. Mm-hmm. what are your expectations, and what do you got to say about the naysayers that are harsh on Coach Pop?
Yeah, no, this is a big test for them, and I think kind of what Jonas and Ben have said, it really comes down to shot making. I mean, we've seen that this team can really go to another level if they can just make shots, and then that fuels them being able to get out on the break and use their athleticism. That's kind of what we saw in just their last win against I forgot who Czech Republic. Yeah, like it was a close game coming out of the first quarter. You know, it was actually very close. I think they were losing by like 4, and then all of a sudden, you know, they got hot from the second half on, and they ended up just blowing them away. They were by 30 easily. And so I think, but again, it comes down to those nights when they're not making shots, and that's actually why, you know, France came away with a win against them, even Australia recently, and they just don't have that communication because they're not used to playing with each other. And you know, I know you don't want to make excuses, but that's kind of what it comes down to. So yeah, they have you know, if they beat Spain, which they had a comfortable win in the exhibition game against Spain, so I think they should take care of business there. Then that game against Australia is the big one against Patty Mills and company. And then if they win that one, and one guy we haven't even mentioned is Luka Doncic can end up being in the gold medal game against the United States. That's somebody else to watch. If he could get through France, then all of a sudden it's not France that the U.S. has to worry about. It might have to be Luka Doncic from the Mavs. So I really feel that yes, if they can pull it together, you know, Pop's got to definitely get some credit here. But you know, a lot of times though too, like it just came down to shooting in some of their losses, and so that's kind of be a big thing. Is, you know, whether or not they shoot is whether or not they're going to medal. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, my consensus here in closing, I think that Team USA is going to have to work for it. They're going to have to want it. They're going to have to figure some things out and push through it, you know. It's going to get hard for them, you know, with these next 3 games coming up. And if they want it bad enough, they're going to find a way to win. And if they don't find a way to win, you know, it just means that the shot didn't fall when they needed it the most. You know, it is what it is. At this point, to me, if they don't medal, it means that they just got outplayed by some very good international teams. And today's tournament style of basketball, these teams have been together for such a long time. They've built this team chemistry. They know everybody's nuances. They know how to play the game. And they're out there. The veterans that they do have out there are very savvy and smart. They know that you don't necessarily have to chunk up threes. You can go ahead and go to your inside presence, you know, go ahead and beat them down low. And not only that, but I saw really good ball movement by some of these international teams. And their ability to knock down the mid-range game, I think, is going to be instrumental to how good these teams are going to be moving forward into the medal rounds. You don't have to necessarily rely so much on the 3. You just have to play good fundamental team basketball. And I hope that's exactly what's going to happen with Team USA moving forward. They can't live and die by the 3 because that's just a recipe for disaster in my book. And if that's what exactly happens, I don't think they medal. But those are just my thoughts. So as we go ahead and bring this to a close, Jonas, where can they follow you on social media?
At Jark Clonus on Twitter.
There you
that's
go.
Where I am.
Jark Clonus. You have any articles coming up here for Project Spurs?
Nothing coming out right now except for, you know, just some Summer League coverage coming up. But I did just have the Summer League preview the other day. Been following Australia and stuff. I put a piece out there about Coach Nielsen and Patty and recognizing them, the other Spurs that are in this Olympics that we might even tend to forget. So that's what's out there right now. And then just look for coverage on Summer League coming up.
All right, what about you, Paul? I know that you are going to have some good stuff coming out for the Spurs cast. Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, we should be having a Spurs cast episode. Colin Reed and I recorded on Friday. So that should be coming out pretty soon here. And it's just like a big, kind of like we discussed here, just a big free agency preview, getting into more of the cap stuff, just really in detail there. Just some free agent targets that we are looking at. And then, of course, you know, once free agency begins, you know, anybody at the Spurs sign, I'll make sure to write that up. As well as Steven Anderson's going to be helping me out there, man, kind of the front there on Project Spurs. And then during the week, you know, just I'll be giving some of my Summer League previews, not previews, analysis, you know, kind of what I think of some of these players. Also, you know, any kind of free agent moves that the team makes or if they make any kind of sign-in trades, things like that, I'll make sure to write on that and provide my thoughts on that. So, yeah, I'm really excited.
Where can they follow you on social media?
At Paul Garcia NBA on Twitter.
There you go. Make sure you follow Paul, and make sure you also follow Jonas Clark. And Benjamin, I know that you're going to have some good stuff coming out here shortly too. So Ben, where can they follow you on social media, and what articles do you have coming up for Project Spurs?
So I've got a little, not a preview, but a post coming up about, you know, kind of what to expect from Josh Primo. You know, it's titled, "So the Spurs disappointed you in the draft. What's next?" So that'll be out soon. Just you know, got to calm the nerves for some people, get them back on this side of the ledge. So just trying to do that. And I'm going to continue to do some previews for prospects next year. I got to go start diving into tape and diving into these high school guys who are going to be one and done. So I was, with all the timing of everything else, I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but I'm excited to look at those guys because I think your perennial powers are going to be back on top. Your Kansas, your Kentucky, your Duke, your UNC, they're going to bounce back from some pretty bad years. So excited for that. And of course on Twitter, you can follow me at _Boomstein. And, I'll get into it with anybody, Spurs, college basketball, whatever. Hit me. Give me all your bad and hot takes. I'm here for it.
Yeah, Ben says, come at me, bro.
Always.
There you go. So you can also follow me. I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at Two Shots Podcast, all spelled out, TWO, Two Shots Podcast. And I'd like to talk to you about anything going on in the world of sports, especially San Antonio Spurs basketball. So for Jonas Clark and Benjamin Bornstein and Paul Garcia, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching another episode of the Spurs Roundtable for Project Spurs. That's about all the time we have for today. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.